yet?
Sorry, fellas, but I simply haven't seen enough hard evidence to warrant a yet in this situation. I remain undecided.
That boy ain't right.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that's just gonna come out and say it. Natural gas burns cleaner than propane. Today it's a food theory, film theory double feature. Over there, we're scientifically testing the optimum way to grill your food via a massive taste test. And over here, we're talking about the show that filled our head with propane grilling propaganda for over 13 years, King of the Hill.
I provide the people of this community with propane and propane accessories. They're soot under my boys' nails. You don't get that from a clean-burning fuel.
For those of you unfamiliar with King of the Hill, it's one of the longest running animated TV shows of all time. 259 episodes following the everyday adventures of the Hill family, Hank, Peggy, and Bobby, and their blue-collar neighborhood in Arlen, Texas, where life is all about grilling, sipping beer, and extramarital affairs.
You've been for 12 years. Nancy, how could you?
You see, when the characters aren't busy selling propane and propane accessories or defending their purse,
Don't be afraid to shout it. That's my purse! That's my purse! I don't know you!
they're busy doing other things. And to this day,
John Redcorn.
3 years after the pilot first aired, a pesky little fan theory lingers that somewhere in the show there's a secret affair that no one has ever revealed. This theory suggests that our main character, Hank Hill, is not the biological father of his son, Bobby. Instead, Bobby's real dad is Bill Dauterive, a longtime family friend and neighbor, a man who, throughout the series, makes no small secret of the fact that he is in love with Peggy Hill.
She's every man's fantasy. I mean, she's got an A+ brain and an A- body, but if she wears one of them push-up brassieres...
Bill!
So today, call me Maury because I'm on the case, looking through the show's lore and science to come up with the definitive answer on who really is the father of Bobby Hill. Now, there are more than a few non-scientific reasons this could be the case. As I mentioned earlier, Hank Hill's neighborhood is the type of place where extramarital affairs not only take place, but are kept secret. The conspicuous affair between John Redcorn and Nancy was kept from Nancy's husband Dale for 14 years, despite the fact that Dale's closest friends were well aware of what was going on the entire time. Secondly, Bill is obviously infatuated with Peggy, while Peggy seems to despise everything about Bill. Then again, we do witness glimmers of affection between them from time to time. So after being married to Hank for 7 years, is it possible that Peggy got the itch and ran to Bill in a moment of weakness? Peggy's self-reported body count is 2, which she admits to after a church group guilts her into confessing.
One. My husband.
Ladies, this is a model for us all. You are an inspiration, a holy beacon.
I would like one more chocolate, please. I slept with another man before I met my husband.
We later learned that body number 2 was her best friend from high school, Wayne Trotter, long before she was married to Hank. Bobby wouldn't be conceived for another 2 decades, which means that Wayne is strictly out as contender for the title of dad. But it's also important to note here that this episode is just one in a sequence of moments where Peggy lies about her past relationships. In the second episode of the series, for instance, Peggy claims to have never kissed a boy until the age of 20, which again doesn't line up with her high school relationship with Wayne. So if Peggy did indeed have some sort of extramarital affair, she wouldn't be the type to openly admit it. What strengthens this theory even more, though, is the fact that Bobby is nothing like his father, Hank, and Hank himself agrees.
That boy ain't right.
Not only does Bobby look nothing like his father, but personality-wise, Bobby is artistic, sensitive, a comedian, and with amazing self-confidence. Everything that Hank is not.
Bobby, I've got some good news, but I want you to promise you're not gonna squeal like a girl. I've decided to let you grow your roses.
At first glance, Bobby is much more similar to Bill here. He looks more like Bill, he has a large appetite just like Bill, he's much more emotional and forthcoming with his feelings just like Bill. But perhaps the most convincing piece of evidence that supports this fan theory is Hank's infertility, an apparent result of his famously narrow urethra.
You know I can't give you more children. I have a narrow urethra.
So you would assume that Hank's urethral issues developed sometime after Bobby, their only child, was conceived, and after that point, Hank was unable to father more children. That would seem reasonable enough on the surface. Urethral structures do change in adults as a result of injury and infection, and a narrow urethra can indeed negatively impact a man's fertility. So the timeline totally checks out, or at least it would if it wasn't for the fact that Hank's narrow urethra was diagnosed long before Bobby was conceived. Season 7, episode 19, Be True to Your Fool, proves that Hank was aware of his narrow urethra before he even graduated high school.
I tried to join up too, but they didn't take me. Urethra.
Bobby wasn't born until Hank was in his mid to late 30s, meaning that Hank had a narrow urethra long before Bobby was born. Well, this alone doesn't necessarily rule Hank out as the father. When you consider it in relation to all the other evidence stacked against him, it certainly raises some pretty pressing paternity questions. And what better way to answer those questions than with science? Now, we could spend all day on this stuff, but what's important to note is that every single trait or phenotype a kid is born with is dictated by a pair of alleles, one from each parent. And if you saw O'Shea Jackson portray his father Ice Cube in the movie Straight Outta Compton, then you already know kids can look an awful lot like their parents. But sometimes they don't. And that's the result of something called incomplete dominance. You see, alleles can either be dominant or recessive, strong or weak. Generally speaking, dominant traits will overpower the recessive traits. So if parent A contributes a dominant allele for black hair and parent B contributes a recessive allele for red hair, their child, let's call him Steve, will have themselves black hair. The dominant trait, black hair, is seen to the world, but deep within Steve's DNA, there's a terrible, sinister secret. Steve is actually a ginger carrier. But the world would never know. That is until Steve grows up and decided to contribute his alleles to some lucky lady. If his recessive red allele is contributed, and Steve's partner also contributes a recessive allele for red hair, then bam, Steve's got himself a red-headed baby, despite the fact that neither parent has red hair. So there you have it. Phenotypes can be passed along in an obvious, straightforward manner, like we saw with Ice-T's son, or recessive traits can sneakily stay dormant and pop up in unexpected places across a given family tree. So what trait should a good paternity snoop keep an eye out for? Studies have shown that kinship indicating phenotypes are particularly present in the upper half of human faces, including the eye region. Meanwhile, quote, the lower part of the face that changes most with development does not contain paternity cues, end quote. Now, let's see what that can tell us about the paternity of Bobby Hill. While the identity of Bobby's father is up in the air, the identity of his mother is not. When we compare Bobby to members of Peggy's family tree, we see that Bobby's phenotypes, his tan hair color, his more rounded skull, his wider, squatter nose, his stockier build, the fact that his eyes are open along the bottom, they don't seem to match anyone from Peggy's side of the family, with the only exception coming from his cousin Luann's open-bottomed eyes. But for every other trait, no match across the entirety of the maternal side of the family. I should also call out the fact that things like eye color and ear shape aren't factored in because King of the Hill's art style doesn't really change either of those elements for pretty much any character. Overall, these results suggest that many of Bobby's expressed traits must be coming from his father's side of the family. So it's finally time to ask the $64,000 question, who resembles Bobby more, Hank or Bill? For the answer, let's go down the upper face phenotype checklist. Eye shape. Bill's eyes are decidedly different, so he's awarded 0 points. While adult Hank may have that eye underlined, when he was Bobby's age, his eyes were actually open along the bottom. So I'm going to call that one a match. Point for Hank. Next up, hair color. Bobby's hair is lighter than both Hank and Bill's hair, even in flashbacks to the men's younger days. 0 points for both. Nose shape. Pretty similar for both candidates, so 1 point each. Finally, we have ourselves skull shape. Compared to Bobby, Hank's skull is much taller and narrower. Bill, on the other hand, has a rounder skull that's a lot closer to Bobby's, so that is 1 point for Bill, 0 points for Hank. In the end, Bobby shares 2 traits out of a possible 4 with both Bill and with Hank. Not exactly the conclusive stuff that I was looking for. However, maybe there's some incomplete dominance at play, so let's compare Bobby to all of Hank and Bill's relatives seen over the course of the entire series. 7 for the Hills and 5 for the Doe trees. And when we open up these phenotype comparisons to the full family trees, we notice a couple of key things. First, outside of Bill, none of the Doe trees look anything close to Bobby. Across the 4 main categories we're looking at, there were absolutely 0 matches. Secondly, and more importantly, when we look at the Hill side of things, we learn something surprising, that Bobby is basically the spitting image of good Hank Hill, or GH.
Dad, you call him good Hank, it's gonna make it sound like I'm bad Hank.
Well, you burnt my burger, didn't you, BH?
Introduced in Season 4, Episode 1, GH is Hank Hill's half-brother. Hank's father, Cotton Hill, had a son with his new wife Dee Dee, and the result is good Hank. Of course, GH can't possibly be Bobby's father, as he's an infant younger than Bobby, but it's nonetheless striking how similar GH and Bobby look. So between the lack of evidence from the Dotrieve side and the incredibly strong resemblance to a member of the Hill side, I think we can safely rule out the whole Bill theory. Sorry, Bill, you are not the father. Bobby Bobby is almost certainly a Hill. But which Hill? You see, the similarities to Hank's father Cotton are undeniable. Not only do their head and nose shapes match, but when we see Cotton's flashbacks, we see that both hair color and eye shape also match. That is 4 for 4. Body shape ain't too far off either. Cotton is, in general, much rounder than any of his sons. But Cotton also has himself the clear advantage where fertility is concerned. Hank's infertility is a legit diagnosed issue, and it's not just present with Hank. When the show travels to Japan to meet Hank's half-brother Junichiro, another of Cotton's sons, we learn that he too struggles with urethra problems.
How come you never got married?
Who would have me? I cannot provide sons.
Do you have a narrow urethra?
Hey,
I'm also limited in that way. There's some stretches you could do.
Meanwhile, Cotton clearly has no infertility issues. Cotton has fathered at least 3 children by 3 different women, and 100% of Cotton's known offspring are boys: Hank, Junichiro, and GH.
How could you not know you had another son? How many women have you slept with? 5, 6?
273.
In addition to all of that, there's the fact that Cotton has himself an inexplicable soft spot for Bobby. Throughout the show, Cotton is a rude, mean little man to basically everyone around him. But there are 2 characters that he's got a soft spot for: his son GH and Bobby.
I'm an old man. Everybody already hates me, but Bobby, he's just a child. He's got his whole life ahead of him.
Is it possible that Cotton has a logical affinity for his sons who phenotypically take after him? After all, he actively dislikes Hank, and he doesn't care about his estranged son Junichiro either. Sure, it might be awkward to imagine Peggy having an affair with Cotton, but science doesn't care about your feelings. It's true, Peggy despises Cotton, but Peggy also despises Bill. That didn't stop her from kissing him that one time, now did it? Besides, Peggy could very well despise Cotton as a result of their affair, or heck, Cotton could just be a sperm donor, a way for Hank to have a genetic son when he himself is incapable of having kids. The biggest thing holding this theory back is the fact that Cotton refers to Bobby as his grandson throughout the entirety of the show. But then again, he didn't know he had a son in Japan either, so just quality fathering from Cotton Hill all around.
I think the baby's crying.
Those parenting classes are starting to pay off.
Thank you.
So the long and short of today's theory is this: Bobby, definitely not the son of Bill. He is a Hill through and through. The real question is whether he's the result of Cotton Hill or recessive genes passed along with the help of a whole lot of urethra stretches.
Only a man with a narrow urethra would think that skinny stick was a tree.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And click the video that you see on screen right now to go learn the proper way to grill, my friends. Do Hank Hill proud. There's a brand new food theory inspired by this episode, all about how to optimize your summertime grilling for maximum scientifically proven deliciousness. Should you be using charcoal, propane, and propane accessories, or dare I say it, butane?
My dad says butane's a bastard gas.